AI is, in my opinion, dramatically underhyped right now.
I love it.
And I think part of that is number one, we're seeing massive actual revenue and impact without that much adoption, right? So Azure's last quarter, they did like $28 billion in the quarter. I think they said 10 to 15% of that lift or growth was from AI products. So that would be what,
Amazing.
2.5 billion or something
Amazing.
quarterly,
Yeah.
right? Amazing.
But that's the infrastructure people are building on. So people are
Sure.
paying them. So are they making are the things on top of it profitable, or are those things just raising money and
Well,
build on
some
it?
things on top of it are doing extremely well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Midjourney is rumored to be doing extremely well
Yep.
financially. There's a variety of companies that are scaling very rapidly, but it's
Yep.
very early days, right? ChatGPT came out less than 2 years ago, and that was a starting gun for a lot of people to realize this
GPT-3 was only 2
even a
years,
thing.
huh? Yeah, it's amazing how fast.
ChatGPT, GPT-4 came out 18 months ago.
Okay.
GPT-3 came out in, I can't remember, it was 21 or
Yeah, this feels more like about 3 years, I think.
20
Yeah.
or something, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 5 years. That
But
makes more sense.
three, you could kind of see things kind of working, but 3.5, 4 was when you really saw the sea change in terms of capabilities, and then ChatGPT got slapped on top of that as sort of a post-training thing. So on the one hand, I think it's dramatically underhyped because very little adoption is still creating these massive revenue streams, but also Klarna, the fintech company, mentioned that they reduced their customer success team by 700 people
Yeah.
by adopting AI, and they suddenly had 24/7 availability in 30 languages with a higher net promoter score, faster response time, higher customer success.
We've seen already like a lot more money go into this wave than anything else in a very long time. It used to be like
Sure.
how much money is right? Like what would it be not underhyped?
Yeah, I think what people are really misunderstanding is what is going to be the end product. And I think the end product is units of cognition, right?
Mm.
You're going to be effectively paying for or renting something that's going to think or do things on your behalf. And that could be legal documents. That could be a customer success team effectively. It could be a software engineering team, which is basically
Yep.
bots writing code for you. And so really this is a revolution in terms of units of cognition, right? And I think that's very underthought about as
It's
actually what the product is going to
It's
be.
interesting because deploying it right now, for example, in the services area, I'm building a
Yeah.
bunch of companies in that area, and it's not pure cognition. It's like right now, it's like doing things to save people tons of time and make each person able to do like 3 times or 4 times as much
That's
work
huge,
too.
right?
So it's like
Yeah.
for example, like an auditor, like you can bring up right away. There's 10 screens they're most likely to look at all around, and that way right away they see it, and that way they saves them
Yeah.
for each like 5 minutes each time, So it's saving them it's making them 3 times as
Sure.
fast. So so it's interesting because right now that's more man-machine symbiosis. Do you see that?
Yeah.
That staying as man-machine symbiosis, or do you see the auditor eventually pretty
I
soon
mean, in
getting
the
thrown
long
out?
run, I a couple years ago, I wrote this blog post that I never published. I just never got around to polishing it. I just put it out. I wrote this maybe 5, 6 years ago, which is basically positing that there'd be like 3 eras of mankind in terms of, or 3 eras of intelligence, right?
Mhm.
And the first era is basically people. And the second era is some hybrid era where it's if you look at the number of intelligence units or whatever you want to call it, the relative brain power, you'd have a mix of humankind and machines, and then eventually it's going to be mainly dominated by machines in terms of just sheer number of brain equivalents that'll exist out there.
Just because it's just easy to build like so many more of
You
these
can
things.
you can scale it fast with a bunch of chips and software. And
But the
so,
idea is these are like serving us and they're like work for us, or is the idea that at some point they're not doing that?
I mean,
It's-
I don't know what the very long run looks like, but in the short run, my team actually looked at this. If you look at, for example, the services world in the U.S., or if you look at SaaS and enterprise software in the U.S. is about $500 billion a year.
Yep.
If you look at the areas of AI or the areas of services that AI can transform, it's probably $5 trillion in headcount, right? Costs. It's just paying employees.
Well, it's $5 trillion in all services in the U.S. Our best estimate's about 40% of that right now could be transformed by AI.
And then you take
eventually
a
more.
cut of that, and you take 10 to 20% of that. But our math was basically, if you say take a 10% cut and transform employee headcount costs into SaaS software, you're back to $500 billion, and you've recreated the entire enterprise software market cap.
No, it's true. I think in the 2.1 trillion that we think could be addressed right now, stuff like healthcare billing, logistics billing, auditing, whatever, some legal stuff. We think already you can at least double the productivity, which would be kind of $1 trillion pulled out, right?
It's
Which is
amazing, right?
which is huge.
Yeah. And then you capture some subset of that, right?
No, so people should definitely give money to all of our funds. That's what we're gonna. It's a big
Yeah,
thing.
it's just again the unit of work that we're selling is different from we'll eventually be selling units of productive intelligence. And that's a new type of SKU that nobody's ever thought about or had before. Because the prior waves of machine learning, I think where people misunderstand AI right now is we've been talking about AI for 20 years. And that's because we had these prior waves of machine learning and convolutional neural networks and RNNs and GANs and all these other types of networks. But they were a very different fundamental, both architecture, but also type of product. Really what those things used to be good at or still are good at is pulling out statistical associations between large data sets.
Yep.
And so they're really good at stats, is basically that prior wave. The
Yep.
current wave is really powerful in that it's actually understanding and generating language and images and other things associated with that. It's basically, and this is based on this new architecture called the transformer architecture, which was invented at Google in 2017.
Yeah.
And that's been the big transformation. So it's actually a different technology curve from what we had before, but people call both of them AI. But I think we need almost like a segmentation of these things because we're on a different trajectory right
When
now.
you say a curve like this, to me, it seems like the curve is more like this, but I could be totally wrong. You think it's going to, I mean, is there going to be a
accelerate.
GPT 5 and 6 or whatever from someone else too?
Yeah.
It's going to just be exponentially better than what we have right now
It's
still.
not only exponentially better, it's impacting other fields. So you look at what Waymo is doing for self-driving or Tesla
Totally.
for self-driving. They've moved over to a transformer backbone and suddenly they see dramatic improvements in what
No, I
they're
mean,
doing.
Elon said he got rid of all of the lines of AI just by using AI. He got rid of 300,000 lines of heuristics basically in Tesla's AI for driving, which is
you
insane.
just go
It's
to
crazy.
end-to-end AI instead of having all these little edge cases hard-coded in. And that's happening in every single field.
I want to push back because I agree it's like dramatically affecting all these fields. I agree, like I said, we're using it for services already, tripling the productivity in many cases. But that's stuff you could do with like where LLMs are today.
Sure.
And so the question is, when you go like this, the question is like, are LLMs going to exponentially keep getting better to the point that it like totally changes and improves it? Or are they hitting some kind of
they're
local
not even
maxima?
close to an asymptote as far as I can tell. And I've talked to a
Really?
lot of the main researchers in the field. The way I think about it is almost like a LLM steps, right? And when you had GPT 3.5 and you went to 4, suddenly legal opened up as a vertical. I backed a company called Harvey and they showed me side by side 3.5 versus 4. 3.5
You
doesn't
couldn't do
work.
it otherwise, yeah.
It just doesn't work, right? You had a model update, suddenly you could do legal. What's the next step?
Podcast hosts.
Yeah. I think that one you could do with like GPT-1.
Oh.
But you have these steps. And so it's this ladder that you're climbing. And eventually you're going to hit a point where it can do all of human services, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's GPT-7 equivalent or 8 or 6 or 10 or whatever, but we're going to get there.
So you really don't think of it in terms of man-machine symbiosis stuff, like stuff we're building now to do these services and win. Will those companies still be valuable in 5 years because they can replace it with AI as it goes along, or is it going to be some new? Is it going to be OpenAI itself that just owns all of those things?
It's
on? How do you
interesting.
think about it?
When I diligenced Harvey, I called a bunch of big law firms. And I asked them, how do you think about this? And law firms traditionally are some of the worst software buyers in the world, right? They don't really innovate. They're locked down because of security and privacy and other very legitimate reasons. But they tend to be very bad buyers, but they were adopting Harvey really quickly. And so I asked them, like, how do you view the future of AI? Or what do you think is going to happen? And I was surprised by how thoughtful and forward thinking they were on this, where they said, look, we think the nature of a law firm will change.
Yeah.
Because right now we hire, I'm making it up, 50 associates every year.
Yeah.
And 5 of them will make it to partner. But we now think that in a couple of years, we can just hire 5 associates to begin with. But then who becomes our partners? What do they learn along the way? How do we teach them? How do we screen them? How do we have a portfolio of people so that some work out and some don't?
Yeah.
And so they're thinking about the legacy of their law firms. And they're like, we don't know how to think about this future world. But it also means maybe you have 1 senior partner and 2 associates and 30 bots.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing kind of shifts.
But it's also interesting. So with Harvey, you have the model where you're selling to a law firm. A lot of my companies, when we call them AI services, we're literally replacing like the healthcare billing firm. Like we're competing and we're doing it all ourselves, but we're doing it way better for a fraction of the cost. Like, are you seeing a lot of those companies right now
absolutely.
as well?
Yeah, it's both.
And I guess what's your intuition? Let's just say for the sake of argument to scare people that you're right and it's going to get way better with GPT 5, 6, 7 or their equivalents.
Yeah.
And is it the case that by GPT 7, maybe they just like do it out of their company themselves even better than our services company, and all of a sudden they're competing with us directly, or if they wanted to, or
it's always possible, but I think it comes down to like what is the other tooling that's needed around what you're doing or what you're providing. And so the things that I'm bullish on are where you own a workflow for a vertical.
Yep.
And so everybody in that vertical is using that workflow.
So you're in the workflow directly.
Yeah. And so if you upgrade the model, it just makes that workflow better.
Yep.
And so it doesn't matter what the model
That's how
is.
I see it. Maybe challenge this model for me just really briefly. I talk about 5 layers for the AI value stack. So the bottom layer is like NVIDIA and chips and everything. The next one's the data centers that all of our friends, family offices are putting tons of money into. And then it's like the models, whether it's Elon's X or OpenAI or Anthropic. Then it's like level 4 would be the tools for deploying AI, which there's a bunch of interesting ones.
Infrastructure,
like data infrastructure, Palantir trying to do things there. A lot of interesting things there. And then level 5 is actually owning the workflow services company. That's where I'm building like probably a dozen things right now. Which I'm sure you're doing a lot too. So which of those 5 are you most bullish on? Which are you spending time on?
Yeah, I'm mainly spending time on the top 3.
And is that
I
the right
used
way to
to,
talk about it?
yeah, I mean, I have a slide that literally has that in sort of presentations I give and stuff.
Cool.
The bottom side of it, the chip side, I actually invested in two companies 7, 8 years ago, thinking that there would be NVIDIA competitors, and I was totally wrong. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
that was really
NVIDIA
hard. That was really hard. Yeah.
is just so good. They're just very good. And there's still room for other players. I'm just saying, like, they've really executed well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I've mainly been focused on the top 3 of those layers. The other thing I've been doing is actually been backing. I've now backed 2 AI-driven buyouts, where the idea is you buy the asset itself, and you can radically change the cost structure or increase the leverage of our organization by putting in AI in a deep way, and then that entity can go and roll up other companies in its vertical.